Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We would now like to begin the KOICA Partnership Conference for International Organizations and NGOs Cooperation. And today's event is being attended by NGO and international organizations from home and abroad, and also regional offices and overseas offices of KOICA. And if you would like to have a simultaneous interpretation service, please press on the button accordingly on the bottom of your screen. Hello once again. We would like to thank all the participants for attending KOICA Partnership Conference for International Organizations and NGOs Cooperation despite your tight schedule. My name is Song Ji-eun from Multilateral Cooperation and Humanitarian Assistance Department of KOICA. Let me give you a short housekeeping announcement before we begin. Today's event is respecting all quarantine guidelines to prevent from the spread out of COVID-19 viruses, and all participants are kindly requested to wear masks throughout the conference and kindly avoid from any physical contact, including shaking hands. And also, it is strictly forbidden to have any food and drinks during the conference in the venue, and we have distributed self-diagnosis questionnaire and also customer satisfaction surveys, so please make sure to fill it up when you leave this venue. And for our online participants, when you leave out the screen, you will be directly connected to the link for the survey, so please make sure that you attend the survey, and your answers will contribute to the more fruitful and advanced event next year. Let me brief the order of today's event. First of all, we would like to introduce our VIPs, and that will be followed by the opening speech of Ms. Kim Ji-yoon, Director of KOICA Multilateral Cooperation Humanitarian Assistance Department. And today's event is composed of two sessions, and for session 1, we will introduce KOICA guidelines and FAQs, and during the second session, we will share new future project directions per each international organizations, and we'll also introduce some best practice cases between NGO and IO. And we will have an overall FAQ session and Q&A sessions to share our future plans. KOICA and KCOC had held a hearing for the hearing of high-level interactive dialogue between international organizations and Korean NGOs, chief of organizations. And last year's event was to recognize the will for mutual cooperation and also to strengthen the bonding relationships. And today, we'd like to share the information in details so that we can correct our errors and trials like previous times. And we would like to now invite Ms. Kim Ji-yoon.
Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's conference. This year's KOICA Partnership Conference for International Organizations NGO Cooperation, or KOPINK, is the second edition following last year when we first got together to discuss and raise awareness on the cooperation between IOs and NGOs. We were then joined by the representatives and heads of Seoul office. I am very well aware that last year's conference with the representatives helped to spread hope and confidence in the importance, necessity, and above all, the possibility with IOs and those within our civil society. I believe such positive change was possible thanks to the active participation and support from various IOs and civil society that were given to our small efforts that first began at KOICA MCHAD. And the focus of this year's conference will be to look back on last year, how we managed to open the doors to cooperation and sow seeds of hope, and further promote their implementation. Therefore, participants this year also include representatives, but also mid-level managers to further discuss some practical solutions. I hope that today's conference will be an occasion to further develop and see some fruitful results in terms of cooperation projects between NGOs and IOs. In addition, for international organizations and civil society participating in this year's conference for the first time, I'd like to ask you to refer to precedent case studies and seize the opportunity to become partners for KOICA's international organization cooperation projects. Recently, Korea and KOICA's ODA project areas and regions are expanding. Moreover, the humanitarian crisis caused by COVID and civil war are also increasing. Korea and KOICA's cooperation projects with international organizations have grown enormously. Its share out of KOICA's total projects was 10 to 15% 3 years ago, but last year it reached 20%. Along with the increased number of international organization cooperation projects, Korea is also placing a focus and demanding active participation from Koreans and Korean institutions in cooperation projects. KOICA's MCHAD oversees and coordinates the entire multilateral cooperation projects of KOICA, and our efforts to connect international organizations and NGOs also began to address different domestic and international demands. In this context, IOs and NGO cooperation was in the past limited to our department's international organization cooperation projects and humanitarian aid public-private cooperation projects, but from this year, we will expand our efforts to all international cooperation projects, including those implemented by KOICA's regional department. We look forward to your active participation in our efforts, and I truly hope that such cooperation will be an opportunity for KOICA, IOs, and Korean civil societies to step further and thrive together. Now, I'd like to thank once again all the participants, and I'd like to briefly introduce to you the distinguished guests joining us today by table. First of all, at table 1, we have KCOC and Ms. Lee Kyung-jin. So please greet the audience while seated. And we have Mr. Lee Dong-gang from Purun Asia. And we also have Mr. Ms. Kim Jin-young from GGGI. Table 2, we have Shim Ryung from IOM and Ms. Yang Mi-gang from CAMP. And Ms. Kim Kyung-ah from KOICA are here with us. Table 3, we're joined by UNFPA Head of Seoul Office Director, and we have the Save for Children guest and from the UN Habitat as well. And at table 4, we are joined by Ms. Kim Ji-yeon from UNHCR and Ms. Lee Kyung-ah from Good People and Kang Hyun-jung from Hatehate Foundation. Table 5, we have actually Ms. Kang Hyun-jung from Hatehate, and we have Ms. Lee from UNICEF and Ms. Lee Kyung-ah from Good People at table 5. And at table 6, we have Lee Hae-young from UNIDO, Ms. Seo Hae-young from Good Neighbors, and Ms. Lee from Taewa Welfare Foundation, and Choi Yun-sung as well. At table 7, we have Ms. Kim Yu-jung from UNFPA, and Mr. Woo Sung-hoon from Global Community Foundation. We have Mr. Nam Jung-hoon and Mr. Lee Chang-duk from KCOC. And last but not least, table 8, we have Nara Lee from FAO, Mr. Park Jun-dong from Poverty Response, and Ko Dae-sun from Better World, and KCOC's Ms. Young-ju. Once again, I would like to thank the participation of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. And the first presentation will be presented by Ms. Kim Kyung-ha from Multilateral Cooperation Department, and she will talk about the main contents of guidelines of international cooperation and also main contents and the formation of new projects at each steps and what to take into account in exploring new projects between IOs and NGOs. Good afternoon. I would now like to introduce the guidelines for 2023 KOICA Multilateral Development Cooperation Projects. Due to time constraints, I can't enumerate all the details of these guidelines, so please refer to the previously distributed materials. This is the order of my presentation. First, we'll talk about objectives and area of focus and the overall project period and budget and prerequisites and recommendations and the PCP that you need to submit to KOICA. And to conclude, we will share the information about timeline and selection process and the workflow. And lastly, well, we all know that we can't receive questions on spot due to time constraint, so we will touch upon some previously selected FAQs to address them. Just before, I have told you that I will talk about objectives and area of focus of KOICA Multilateral Development Cooperation Projects for 2023. Well, the main content is exactly the same as last year, so let me be brief. Our projects should focus on the humanitarian assistance development peace nexus, particularly addressing refugees, including IDPs issues. So in conflict countries or conflict-affected areas, resettlement of the refugees and IDPs should be addressed, or those people in shelter or their capacity enhancement projects and enhancement of social integration, or policy capability enhancement and conflict prevention activities. Well, these should be addressed in your proposal submission. And it is quite natural to say this. So our project should also be closely aligned with SDG 5 and SDG 16, and KOICA has its midterm sectoral strategy from 2021 to 2025, which is to be shared later. So please align your project with KOICA midterm sectoral strategy. And also, it should be aligned with partner countries' national development strategies or policies. And you must have your own HDP nexus. So that should be related to all these strategies. And the main content is the same as last year. We only target a single partner country. And your project should be at least 18 months and over. And the total budget of $6 million USD, a maximum including 1% coordination levy. Well, coordination levy has different requirements for each IO, so please mind that. And you need to set the initiation date of the project in 2023. And if it starts in the middle of 2023, then the first year's budget should be 20% of the total project budget. And you must be curious to be clear about the indirect cost. We do not have any detailed special clauses, but you need to have a detailed breakdown. And as for co-funding, the minimum is 7%. So minimum of 7% of the entire project budget should be co-funded. So out of 1 million, 70,000 USD should be separately set in place, and this is a must condition. And 7% is minimum, and the projects with a co-funding plan of over 7% of the project budget would have an advantage in the review. And if there's any specific reasons that you can't guarantee the minimum of 7%, then you need to submit your ground. And concerning levy, well, UN organizations have requested a 1% of coordination levy, and as mentioned earlier, the coordination levy is in the budget plan and allocate the levy in the first year budget as a lump sum. And we please follow the relevant rules and regulations of each country. And if KOICA provides $1 million, then this 1% levy is included in the total budget. So which means that if the total budget is $1 million, then 1% levy is included as 9,901, and contribution there should be 990,099. So it should be cleared. And concerning this part, we have received many questions about recruitment of Korean nationals. Well, many TORs can be possible, and this can be set up by IOs. But if you could make a proposal, and then M&Es or communication customs, and many roles can be assigned to Korean national. And IO, it will be totally up to IO's decision depending on project. So please make a TOR accordingly. And the hiring period should be at least 24 months. But I told you that the minimum project period is 18 months. And if you have an exactly 18 months period, and if you have to hire at least 24 months, it will go over. So if it is 18 months, yes, in this case, recruitment period can be 18 months. But overall, many projects should stay will stay 24 months. And also to be recognized as a career, then at least 24 months should be guaranteed, and that is why we have set up the bar of 24 months for the recruitment of Korean nationals. And who to recruit concerning this, there's no detailed plans on PCP. We didn't see many cases having details of recruitment. So from the proposals or the project 2023, please establish a detailed TOR that should be attached to the PCP. Of course, you must have your own formulation and template for TOR, but who to recruit at which position and for how long, and then these basic and detailed information should be included in the PCP. And this part must be confusing. We have a system called KMCO. KMCO is not part of our KOPINK project. We manage some voluntary workers within KOICA, and we help them to develop their humanitarian assistance-related careers. So KOICA dispatches these workers to KOICA-led projects overseas. So this is apart from the direct recruitment of KOICA. KOICA contributed international cooperation projects. So then how can you make a connection between these two? Well, this is a recommendation from KOICA. KMCO participants need a bridging career ladder. So amongst out of people attended KMCO project, if you need a candidate for your position, then you can pick a candidate from KMCO pool. This is a recommendation. This is not mandatory. But based on our experiences, KMCO people have international experiences and guaranteed by KOICA, so we're sure that the IOs can also secure high quality human resources pool through KMCO. But well, actually, KMCO recruits entry-level people of P2 and P3. So if you want to make a connection from KOCO, then you can recruit upper level of P3 and P4 for Korean direct Korean recruitment programs. But yes, again, KMCO has already international projects with dispatched KMCO workers, and you may be curious to know that if you could use those personnel in overseas sites already. No, you need to recruit newly from KMCO pool. Well, you must be aware of these, so I am not going to mention about these. And recommendations, well, this is the most important part. What we request to IOs is to strengthen cooperation with Korean NGOs. Well, last year, as Ms. Kim has mentioned, Korean NGOs have had a high-level dialogue with international organizations, and after running this program for 2 to 3 years, and we recognize the needs and importance of sharing information more precisely. So let me share the definition of each entity. KOICA Multilateral Development Cooperation Projects means the projects that have been identified and formulated and selected through the screening process. Well, if we refer to international organization, it means international organization for KOICA MDC projects. Then who's Korean NGO? It's a NGO which is officially registered as a corporation in Korea, but there's a vague area like INGO. So in the case of INGO, you must have a Korean branch in Korea. So you need to be connected to a Korean registered partner. And also local office of Korean NGO. Well, there are some cases that the office staff are 100% non-Koreans. Then the contracting entity shall be the Korean headquarters. And as for multilateral development cooperation projects, KOICA has a variety of international projects. And what we are dealing with is not only the projects that we work on directly, but also MDC projects and officially provided by KOICA, and other projects like levy and co-funding 7% and recruitment of Korean personnel and recruitment. Well, these will identically apply to all KOICA-led projects. And the objectives, well, what's the main objective of this is that, well, there are different stages for each NGOs, so we have divided into 2 different stages. First, the incubation stage is how to plan and operate and manage ODA projects. So Korean NGOs gains deeper knowledge of ODA projects, including its systems and procedures. But as for NGOs experienced in incubation stage, then in a later stage, they can independently bid for international projects, and they should be strengthened in terms of their capacity. That we would like to support the order performance of Korean NGOs to promote their independent entry to the global ODA procurement market in the future. Then what types of projects should it be? Well, first, Korean NGOs and IOs should be cooperated. Here, KOICA can play a bridging role, but we do not involve directly into this project, giving directions. So we have 3 types. Type 1 is that IO will provide a IO will provide different PCPs to KOICA, and KOICA will work on part of it in cooperation with Korean NGOs. And type B is about experts of Korean NGOs be hired as experts to the projects planned by international organizations. So Korean expert can be participating in international projects together. And the one another case is that regardless of direct dispatch or participation of Korean expert, when either case is not possible, then they can participate in the formation of the project in the beginning stage or in the review process at the later stage of a project. But what I propose today is some representative cases, so you can also think of creative activities. We're open to that. Then, how can we recognize the cooperation? And we will give you a clear-cut recommendations. There must be a written contract and cash flow between international organizations and Korean NGOs. Well, you can be in charge of special activity or dispatch an expert, and this should be supported by the cash flow from IO to Korean NGOs and vice versa, and that should be stipulated in a written contract. But this is a contract between entities. So when dispatching a Korean expert, you may think it will also be possible to have a contract with that individual expert. No, it's not. All contracts should be between entities, corporates. And here, KOICA plays a role of matchmaker. So the relationship is and should be based on the negotiation between IO and Korean NGO. So KOICA doesn't feature in a contract. Contracting party should be international organization and Korean NGO.
So this is actually the most important chart, but I'm sure the letters are small. So let me first read it off from the screen. So first we submit the proposal, and then according to the timeline of selection by each stage and each phase, this shows how the IOs and the NGOs should cooperate and what kind of documents should be produced. So first of all, we have 6 stages. First of all, there is the PCP submission stage, and then KOICA does a preliminary review. And based on the results of the review, the first selected projects will go through field survey to supplement the information. And then there is the main review. And we will announce the results of the main review. And based on that, KOICA and IOs will sign a grant arrangement. And based on that arrangement signed, IOs and NGOs will also sign a contract, an arrangement. So I am going to share with you what documents are required for each stage. First of all, when you submit your PCP, I'm going to come back to this later on, but as for the project formation and constitution, all of that will be done at a local level through national offices, local offices. So we distributed the PCP and we elaborated on that today. So the IOs should think about what kind of projects to implement in which country. So you're at the ideation stage. So at this stage, a Korean NGO or NGO based in Korea or the Korean NGO overseas office. So for people in Seoul, it'll be at the KOICA headquarters, and in overseas, it'll be through KOICA's national offices. So they will have access to information of what kind of projects are being formed in IOs and in which projects we can actually participate. So it's like a market research stage. So in that stage, if you look at the key output at the bottom, so these are what the IOs should do. So IOs, when you submit your PCPs, I said before that you had to attach TOR for Korean experts or national experts. So as for the NGO cooperation plan, last year there was no any specific requirement. But we're now at the planning stage, so it is always subject to change later on. But it should be specific and concrete to a certain extent. So in PCP, you have to specify which activities or which experts will join. So in a way, you can say that it's a plan from the IO's perspective. That should be elaborated. And plus that, you have to say, like, there are this and this Korean NGOs in the recipient country, and it is highly likely that such and such NGO will join. So you should make these kind of proposals and suggestions that we will take into account when we select a PCP, and we can have an idea how specific your PCP is currently under development. So the more specific this is, the higher chance you have to be retained. So we are going to base our preliminary review based on that. So for the projects that pass the preliminary review, as I said, we'll go through a field survey. And during this stage, we are actually going to give feedback on the preliminary review. And based on that, the IOs will complement their PCP submission, and they can actually have more specific ideas with which NGOs that they want to cooperate with, and they can share that with the local KOICA office. So you have to establish cooperation measures within the project plan. So this is a huge table. It spans 2 pages, so I'm going back and forth the pages. So we have the main review that follows. So the PCP during the preliminary proposal was a draft proposal. During the main review, it's a revised proposal. So the NGO candidate is quite specific and TOR is very specific. And based on that, we're going to make a final review. And then we're going to finally select the project. So at this stage, actually NGOs should wait a little bit because between KOICA and IOs, we have to sign an arrangement. As you may well know, we never know what's going to happen before we have the contract. So as long as we have the arrangement, we cannot proceed. So KOICA and IOs need to assign a grant arrangement, but this takes time. Usually at the end, we do the main review and we announce the finalist. And usually it takes more than 6 months to sign a grant arrangement. And the actors of the grant arrangement is the head of the head of the IO and also the head of the local office of KOICA. So if you want to have an update on how the grant arrangement is proceeding, then you can communicate with the local KOICA offices. Anyway, so we are going to sign this grant arrangement, and once it is signed, based on that arrangement, the IO will go through a fair process to select an NGO. I repeatedly said in the beginning, KOICA actually does not give any advice. This is the NGO you should work with. And as for international organizations, I'm sure they all have their fair and transparent process and selection process. So I believe that we will leave all that to IOs to select their NGOs according to their bylaws. So if you select one Korean NGO, then the specific TOR budget and all the activities included contract will be signed. And all the discussions that you discussed during the PCP and until we sign the final grant arrangement, it takes about 1 year. So a lot of the NGOs actually are mistaken that, they think that they're chosen at the PCP stage. But as I said, nothing is certain and for sure until you sign the arrangement. So please understand each and every step of this process so that you will have an idea how much you should be involved with and how long it will take and what the role of KOICA should be. So the details of this table will be shared with you in presentation files, and you can refer to that later on. And this is the most important part as well. You have to submit your PCPs. As I said before, the biggest change from last year is that PCP were submitted by IOs to KOICA headquarters. So IO headquarters submitted the PCP to KOICA headquarters. But the IO office will submit the PCP to KOICA Overseas of Office. The reason for that is we are going for localization, and we want to actually, the local offices arrange oral portfolios of the recipient countries. So we believe that the development cooperation project should be aligned with that. That's why we gave the role to the local offices. But we have limited the number of projects per organization to 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So if at a headquarter level, 3 has been submitted, but at times, if it comes from the office level, we cannot know whether this falls under the allotment, 3 allotments of that are already defined. So I would like to ask our IOs I would like to ask the local offices of IOs to discuss with the IO headquarters to check whether whether your projects fall under the 3 allotment scope. And each PCPs must attach an official letter from the headquarters confirming that the project is one of the 3 allotments as evidence of the consultation. So this is an important requirement for your selection submission process. So regarding the format and number of pages, please refer to the formation guidelines I distributed before. And another important point is the deadline. So please submit the PCP to KOICA Country Office by June 15, 2021. And today, because of time constraint, we cannot receive your questions. But if you have questions, please contact us by email until May 14, 2021. We're going to gather all the questions on a weekly basis and give you a response. So in PCP, the appendix until 5 is same as last year, but 6 and 7, so the TUR on employment of Korean national, and 7, approval letter of PCP from headquarters of the IO should be attached for this year's PCP. So this is the timeline and selection process. So until June 15, that is your deadline. And the preliminary review will take place the month after. We're going to share with you the results, and probably by September, we will initiate a field survey. But of course, we have to look how COVID will unfold. And by sometime November, we're going to do main review and share the results of main review sometime in December. Once again, I would like to say that the project formation guidelines have been distributed by KOICA to IO headquarters and IO country offices. So through MOFA and through KOICA country office. So as I said, the submission route has changed. So usually IO headquarters send submissions to KOICA headquarters, but this channel has been eliminated. You should always submit your PCP from IO country office to KOICA country office. And as for the preliminary review, we're going to do an internal preliminary review, but for the main review, it's the same process as last year. So the PCP author will be interviewed by Zoom. This is the same process as last year. And the results of the final selections will be done the same as the distribution of guidelines. So it will be done through KOICA HQ and KOICA country office. So I have selected a few questions that are considered as important. So is it possible to submit a joint proposal is the number 1 question. It is possible, but it's considered as one proposal. So for example, just because it's 50% participation doesn't mean it's 0.5 project. If 10% participation is not only 0.1 proposal, so it's considered as one proposal as a whole. So please consider that. And regarding HDPN related projects, so what is the scope of HDPN is what you're wondering. So I think if it's related with dark recommendation, then we don't want to actually manage everything very tightly. And if the recipient countries doesn't have official refugees, what do we do? Well, then, we believe that refugees are affected by crisis. So even though they don't have the refugee code, we are very flexible on that. But one thing is that COVID-19 response projects are very high in demand. But I believe that COVID-19 response only is not enough. If you make a nexus or connection between refugees and COVID-19 response, that would be okay. But just COVID-19 response only will not be accepted. And number 5 is important. So I mentioned about different channels that we have for the KOICA's international development cooperation projects. So is it possible to submit different PCP to different channels of KOICA? No, because we always do the cross-checking with other departments, so we would know. It's the same when you apply for university. If an applicant submits the applications to many, many different countries, you will be not very well viewed during the interview. So please take that into consideration. And the reason we integrated channel to country office is because we did not want to receive similar projects from similar organizations, same organizations. And what should the no objection letter from the recipient government include? So if you're thinking about a project in international organizations, so no objection letter is to show that you have discussed that with the recipient country. So please have a no objection letter signed by the head of the IO of the recipient country. And as for number 7 and 8, as I said, KOICA plays the role of a matchmaker. So the actual cooperation and the recruitment of Korean nationals are at the sole realm and responsibility of IOs. Of course, you have submitted the plans and you've been selected as a final finalist, but you wanted to actually recruit Korean nationals and you wanted to sign cooperation agreement with NGOs. You may actually experience unexpected results, unexpected difficulties. So we're going to have a look at how much of a force majeure that problem was. So if it's just a simple violation of the rules or the promise, then we're going to impose sanctions. There's going to be some sort of a punishment. So we do not want you to just submit any plans. So please be very specific about the plans and also think about the feasibility of the plan. And the contact point is that everything should be KOICA country office. But regarding the regime, the guidelines, and everything, then please email us at the Korea HQ. But regarding the PCP proposal conception, it will be all monitored by the country office. So please contact the country officer. I think that I went over the given time. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to email us, and we'll make sure to get back to you. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, let us now begin the second session of today's conference. We have around 200 participants online from diverse institutions and organizations. And we understand that there are people who are accustomed to the contents of this presentation and those who are not. So at the end of the session 2, we will have a general Q&A session, and you can use this time to ask as many questions as possible so that we can address them all. All right, then as briefed before, we will now talk about the future projects on the new projects of IOs. Out of all IOs, we will listen to GGGI, IOM, UNFPA, and the UNHCR in the order. As expressed before, 7 minutes will be assigned to each organization. And first, we will listen to Mr. Lee of GGGI and their new project plans. Please come forward. Good afternoon. I am Kim Jin-young, Director for Asia of Global Green Growth Institute. Through today's presentation, I will introduce about our organization and the business areas. And also, Multilateral Humanitarian Assistance Program is under consideration by our institute, so I would like to introduce that plan too. GGGI is a bit different international organization other than other IOs. And we are based on treaty, and we have a observer status, and also we have a right to OECD TAC, but we're not an UN organization. And we are headquartered in Seoul, Korea, and currently we have 39 member countries. And until the end of next year, we are expecting to gain 20 more countries from developing countries and emerging countries. And we're now running 34 country programs in those countries. Our annual budget is $132 million. It's biennium budget. And we have 491 experts working for the institute, and out of them, around 400 people are working on spot in developing countries on site. And you can see different countries where our workers, our personnel are dispatched. GGGI has its own roles and responsibilities. Green growth and tackling climate change are two main focuses of our institute, and we would like to support low carbon and green growth, sustainable growth, economy transformation. And what we do mainly is that under a big mission, we support developing countries to arrange green growth plan and climate change plan, low carbon plan, and green transformation plans. We support those plans and establishing capacities. And we also support in establishing pipelines of national policies in relation with those areas. And we also gather funds and support for capacity building process of each country. And what you see is the value chain of our businesses. And in each sector, we cover energy and sustainable landscape and green buildings and water, and we cover a variety of areas. And our main counterparts are governments of developing countries. But practically, as regarding green growth and climate change response, that should be done by countries, and that's why we have deeper relationships with governments and civil society and the private sector to develop a sustainable and long-term plans within a country. These are main business areas of GGGI with detailed objectives. We have 6 concrete objectives within our institute, and we help partners to reach these goals respectively. And every year with partner countries, and we divulge these information of outcomes to the general public, reduce the GHG emission and creation of green jobs, and increase access to sustainable and social services by marginalized people or the vulnerable, and improve the air quality. supply of ecosystem services ensured, and enhanced adaptation to climate change. These are 6 main objectives. Well, then, how can we transform those outcomes into tangible results? Last year was hard and difficult due to COVID-19, but despite that, we were able to achieve many outcomes. And in relation with the policies of green growth and climate change, well, developing countries had adopted those and constitutionalized, and also to make sure the implementation of those plans, $2 billion were gathered through GGGI. And these are the results. Well, the results are cumulative each year, and as you can see on the screen, well, let me be quick. And if you look at the current outcome, one of those outcomes is a Mongolian case. GGGI designed a project, and we also supported many energy efficiency programs in Mongolia. And also, responses to COVID-19 is one of the concrete outcomes and results of GGGI's activities. And to respond efficiently to COVID-19, GGGI is formulating many methodologies. And in addition to that, this must be an important part. Regarding KOICA Partnership and Multilateral International Organizations NGOs cooperation, we've had a good result of Indonesian case. And this year, we are targeting Indonesia and Mongolia, and we are preparing for new projects in those two countries. Well, I don't think I can give you all the details about these two projects due to time limits, but amongst the NGO personnel attending here, if you are now working in Indonesia or Mongolia in terms of eco-forestry or water management, and if you're interested in those subject areas, please contact us actively so that we can have a detailed discussion and to figure out what kind of cooperation will be possible. Thank you.
So that was the introduction to the organization's portfolio and new project proposals or plans. Next, I would like to invite Officer Shim Nyung of IOM. Please come up to the stage. Hello, everyone. I am Shim Nyung from IOM Korea. So I'm sure that a lot of people are interested in our organization, but I'm sure that my colleagues have never seen me give a presentation in Korean. But I'm pretty nervous today. So this is the content of my presentation. As you may well know about IOM, even though you may well know about IOM, I'm going to briefly introduce to you our organization. And I'm also going to talk about how the KOICA Multilateral Cooperation projects are taking place within IOM and how the NGO partnership has been formed within that program. So IOM was established in 1951, and after the Second World War, the organization was set up as an intergovernmental body to support refugees out of the UN system. But as the refugees' status or affairs have become important, it became part of the UN system since 2016, and there are 173 member states, 9 observer states, as well as 9 regional offices, as well as 100 country offices operating worldwide. We actually are involved in the field of migration, so migration of people. I said refugees before, but it's actually migration. So the role of IOM is very vast and broad. But today, I would like to say that IOM's comprehensive program approach is focused on HTP nexus. So I'm going to explain a little bit about this. And I'm also going to share with you how we are forming our partnership with NGOs. So at IOM, as you may well know, we provide humanitarian aid across the world. We're very active in this field. And of course, we address the immediate needs. But what is also important is how we're going to help out with the recovery. So we're giving a lot of thought to this issue as well. And IOM deals with migration issues. So we refer to it as forced migration. So this means people are forced to migrate to other countries because of, for example, wars or because of crisis. And our role is to address and minimize forced migration as well. So we're very keen on developing and providing solutions that fit the needs of the field. For example, we try to build resilience in affected communities, and also we make sure that the sustainable development takes place constantly and continuously. And across all of these processes, we work hard to promote local and national ownership. This is one of the important things we do. So all of these programs need to address different needs, and they need to be highly contextualized. And it is also very important to ensure the safety and security of the communities and also support the development of governance within communities. So we at IOM, so please have a look at the blue box below. So these are the KOICA Multilateral Cooperation funding projects. And if you look at the title of the projects, you can see the words like resilience, communities, durable solutions, and governance. So these are the keywords that we focus on. KOICA's Multilateral Development Cooperation Project has very clear guidelines. So this year, the number of proposals is 3. Maximum number of proposals is 3. Last year, it was only 2. So we at IOM also had an internal process to select the proposals that we have to make. So when the hand paper concepts are submitted to regional offices, then the regional offices, the Geneva headquarters, and IMO Korea review together to select the finalists. And if we select the 3 finalists, then we try to align them with the KOICA's full proposal template. So we have this internal process within our organization, and we believe that it will be the second week of May where we will select the full proposal. And the NGO partnership regarding the multilateral development project will also go through internal selection process. So we are looking for partners that can closely collaborate with us on the field, and especially the multilateral development cooperation projects need to meet different criteria. So we're showing a more flexibility. So once the country is selected, we actually share information with the NGOs, and we discuss the capabilities of each NGOs, and finally choose the NGO of our choice, the NGO that we're looking for. So we have we will include all of these requirements and R&R and so forth in the call for proposal. So we will also collaborate with KCOC KOICA to update them on how things are unfolding and developing. So I briefly explained about organization and the process. If you have further questions or comments, please contact me and I'll be happy to respond to your inquiry. Thank you. Yes, so IMO is working very hard to expand their cooperation project business. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Won Do-young from Ms. Won Do-young from UNFPA for their presentation.
Good afternoon. I am Won Do-yeon, Chief of UNFPA Seoul Office. And first of all, I would like to thank Ms. Kim from KOICA and their staff members for giving me this opportunity. Well, UNFPA is in the similar line of thought in cooperating with the partner organizations on site. So I would like to touch upon the overview of our institution and how we engage on IP and ongoing KOICA projects with our institute and 2023 call for proposals and suggestions for Korean NGOs. Let me introduce UNFPA. Well, we celebrated the 50th anniversary last year, and our annual budget is around 1.3 billion US dollars in sexual and reproductive health commodities in the world. And we are present in 155 countries. Our three major goals is to end the unmet need for family planning and to end maternal death and to end violence and harmful practices against women and girls. In the field, UNFPA cooperates with NGOs as implementing partners in two areas. Well, option one is to select the proposals using competitive process, and option two, when we do not have alternatives or when we are in an emergency situation, we select implementing partner using non-competitive process. This is a simple flow chart of how to formalize the partnership with us. You can check the flow, select the IP implementing partner, and once selected, the partner will be registered to UNFPA system and we will design and sign and implement, monitor, and revise. Well, there are ongoing KOICA projects with the UNFPA, and CHOD project is about to begin in this year to build community resilience and transformation lives of women and youth in humanitarian and conflict high-risk provinces. And it was 8th February this year that we got the official approval letter from KOICA, and we're now discussing the agreement to be signed. And efficient cooperation is ongoing. And the second project is Rwanda project, which was adopted in 2019, and it is on the right track. Its objective is to support the young entrepreneurs with seed funding, training, and skills development to generate innovative solutions in response to challenges related to sexual and reproductive health and rights. And we're actively partnering with Korean NGOs as well. And you may be very much interested in this project. 2023 call for proposals, and we will finalize selection of the country offices early to mid-May and finalize the proposals first week of June. The probable projects is the 2 proposals from country offices in Africa and 1 proposal from Asia. In Asia, we're reviewing the Philippines, and in Africa, Niger, Mauritania, Gambia, Ethiopia. We're now seeing these countries in each region, but it could change. So the countries are not finalized yet. To tell you the truth, we're just under review. And some suggestions for Korean NGOs. Concerning the KOICA project, if you would like to cooperate, to partner with us, then please contact the Seoul office. Well, 5 countries that I have just mentioned are under review and they are subject to change. So please contact us so that we can update you with precise and detailed ongoing information. And you can refer to the slides for further details. And we have on-site office chiefs who are very much interested in comparative advantage so that they can figure out why Korea will be a lot more advantageous than other candidates. So this is all we have. So if you have any questions, please raise them during the Q&A session. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Won, for introducing diverse selecting process and the criteria for new project proposals. Then we will move on to UNHCR presentation.
Hello, I am Jiyoon Kim, Associate External Relations Officer of UNHCR. So other organizations touched upon the brief history and their expertise, so I am also going to do the same briefly. So our organization first received the aid from Korea from 1979, and the lease funding was about $10,000. And now, with the private and public funding altogether, it exceeds $80 million provided by the Korean government. And from September 2016, we actually have the word $20 million donor club that provides more than $20 million per year. And Korea has become member of that club since 2016. And KOICA also plays a very important role in partnering with UNHCR. The first project or first operation was in 2014, and it started off from a very small scale of 30,000 project. And actually, out of all the contributions to Korea, 30% of the funding comes from KOICA for UNHCR. So KOICA has emerged as a very important partner for UNHCR. We have many NGO officials here. And of course, our partnership history with KOICA is in its 7th and 8th year. It's relatively short compared to other organizations, but UNHCR actually values, the strategic. We may have a lower understanding of the organization-wide strategy of cooperation vis-a-vis KOICA. I think that's the area I may have to work further on. So our organization, when we have a guideline for cooperation, of course, it's shared with HQ as well as the regional bureaus by HQ. And the regional bureaus have the country offices that are operating under regional bureaus, and they would actually discuss about which country is the most fit for that project. And the country office will draft the proposal and in consultation with relevant authorities and submit the proposal. So we implemented 7 KOICA projects, and half of that were concentrated in Africa. So from this year, maybe from last year, we are trying to go for a geographical, balanced geographical distribution. So most of the projects were concentrated in Africa, but from this round, we can submit 3 proposals. So we're thinking about 1 for Latin America, 1 Africa, and 1 Central East and Asia. But of course, we cannot share with you all the list of the candidates. We are currently in the consultation process with the African Regional Bureau, and we really differ in terms of the candidates that we want to present. So we are actually in the process of finding a consensus. But for the time being, I can share with you the case of Colombia and Afghanistan. But of course, this is subject to change in the future. But as for Colombia, we have finalized the discussions with the Colombian office, and the project was actually funded by a regional bureau. But since October, we believed that it was a little bit different from the direction of the work of the local offices. So we were recommended that. So we decided to implement a multilateral cooperation development project for Colombia. As for Afghanistan, so Korea actually contributed greatly to UNHCR to support Afghanistan issues. And up until now, more than $45 million have been committed and provided by Korea to help Afghanistan. And going forward, with the increasing need for international assistance, we would like to ask for KOICA's assistance in terms of Afghanistan. And last year, of course, the number of returnees or people who repatriated decreased slightly. But with the repatriation taking place more and more, there are a lot of considerations to make. And we also have to be keen on the peace results, peace talks between the Afghan and Taliban and so forth. But thanks to the funding of the Korean government, we were able to build 250 shelters. And this is a proposal. We're now going to submit a proposal for 2023. So we are thinking about how to better protect the Afghanistan returnees and support their social integration. So $6 million will be done for Colombia, Afghanistan, and so forth. So if there is an NGO that is operating in these regions, please contact our Korean office and the regional bureau, and we'll be happy to receive any cooperation proposals that you may have regarding our project. This is just a recommendation, but our organization has had a lot of difficulty in terms of NGO partnership. Of course, officially, you have to register as NGO in the UN Partner Portal, and there is a certain process that you have to go through. But even though you don't register at this portal, you can have a look at the list of all the sites that are projects that are available. So the number of the title of the project, and the organization concerned. And if you click further, you can have the details of the project, the background, and what you need to fulfill as criteria to become a partner for this project. And so the criteria is quite clear and evident. But across the world and globally, we are very keen on KOICA project. So we had meetings with major NGOs in Korea, and the HQ, I asked the HQ, what are the organizations at IO and IP? So this is what we consider as IO and OP in the region. But what we checked with the HQ was that all of these NGOs do not have actually the IP/OP status. So we do have a lot of limitations and constraints, but we are very open to receiving creative ideas to find the right partnership. So if you have any good idea, never hesitate to contact the Korea office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lastly, she has mentioned about creative way or creative approach. In the future, in cooperating with NGOs for multinational projects, I think it would be really necessary for all of us to think of creative ways and approaches. And next is UNICEF, UNIDO, and WFPA, and FAO. Well, first I would like to listen to UNICEF. Please come forward. Good afternoon. My name is Lee Sang-mi from UNICEF Seoul office. Following last year, thank you very much, Ms. Kim from the Department of Multilateral Cooperation of KOICA for holding this event like last year. Last year, KOICA and the KCOC have held many similar events where we could share relevant guidelines and processes and implementing qualifications for and the requirements to be implementing partners. Well, up to now, at the level of UNICEF, we haven't had any changes, so I am not going to make any updates on that. But the appropriate updates will be made when there's change. Well, I know that this material is shared with all participants, so I would like to only focus on selection criteria and the candidate countries. Well, let me be clear about one thing. Seoul office is open in 2017, and before that time, since 1993, UNICEF Korea has been working as the face of UNICEF in Korea, and we deal with the government. And the New York division has opened up a liaison office in Korea to deal with and to cope with the government since 2017. And this is the project with KOICA that starts this year, Ethiopia project. As Ms. Park has mentioned, Ms. Park asked me not to be too broad, but to focus on two areas: who to select, how to select. So, when Ethiopian country office has made a proposal to us, we used a specific assessment for selection. Well, actually, KOICA has distributed a list of NGOs, and based on that list, we sent a list of questionnaires to several NGOs, and some of them have rejected to answer. But the criteria of those questionnaires was to see if the relevant NGO will be qualified for partnership in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia project is related to Nexus, and sector expertise is the most important criteria. But the specialty should be HDP nexus. So for us, WASH component is the utmost importance, and GVB expertise, and also DRR and child protection comparative advantage. And those areas were reviewed extensively, and IDP and refugee or children, women, or just community. So we asked the question about target group and if field office presence is available or not. Because so if you want to work with UNICEF, you need to have a field presence and some details that we requested for the project. And if they have a counterpart in the project country, and we also asked about their future plan. When we did this survey, we were not registered to UNFPA because KOICA project is a project of 2 years ahead. So even if the NGO is not registered to UNFPA, we didn't ask that because the registration can be made later. And based on these different questions, we have summed up a total points. And depending on the final points achieved, we selected and select a partner country. And sexual exploitation and abuse. Well, UNICEF always evaluates this area for any potential candidates, institutions. When Ms. Kim has mentioned about type A, B, C, well, out of these three categories, we are not sure to which extent we can accept because we have to review it. But one of the collaboration type with CSO from UNICEF is consortium. There's a formal and informal consortiums respectively. A formal consortium is to sign a PCA contract between UNICEF and an NGO, and an informal consortium is to select a lead organization amongst the other NGOs, and the other NGOs will be secondary, and UNICEF will sign a contract with the lead organization. That's how we collaborate. Yes. And UNICEF is not a complete This is not a complete form, but UNICEF also has an attribution of regions like explored Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These three regions are under review. And in Africa, DR Congo, we have had a final answer from the country office. And concerning other two areas, I think the finalization will be made in the beginning of May. Once finalized, we will also share the updates with KOICA and NGOs. Thank you.
So while preparing for today's event, we actually tried to give a presentation that truly answers the inquiries that were made by the NGOs in advance. And I'd like to thank UNICEF for preparing a thorough presentation. Now I'd like to invite the UNIDO's representative to give the presentation. Hello, everyone. I am Lee Hae-young from UNIDO, Korea. So thank you very much for putting together this meaningful event in these difficult times. Thank you, KOICA and KCOC. I would like to take this opportunity to briefly talk to you about our organization, UNIDO, as well as the project guidelines for this year. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about our plans for Multilateral Development Cooperation Project's proposal for this year. First of all, UNIDO is a specialized agency of the UN that promotes industrial development in developing countries. So we are concerned with the SDG 9, which is building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation. In order to attain this goal, we are providing different forms of services, going from technical cooperation and as well as policy advisory for developing countries and normative and quality-related works, as well as capacity development programs that are rolled out for developing countries. This is the history of UNIDO. UNIDO was first affiliated with ECOSOC as a separate department, but we became a specialized agency, or separate agency in 1966, and We became a UN specialized agency in 1985, and the Korean office opened doors in 1987. We have different offices around the world. We have 170 member states headquartered in Vienna, and our regional offices number is 48, and they cover about 156 countries around the world. Other than the regional hubs, we have special offices that are mandated to do specific operations. So they're located in different regions. I would like to summarize our projects for 2020. So we implemented projects in 129 countries. And if you look at the bottom, there is about 550 million budget that we used. And out of that, $177 million were invested in technical projects. So this is a list of UNIDO's projects funded by Korean government. So if you look at Cambodia, Colombia, Iran, and Cuba, they implemented projects or will implement or finalize projects funded by the Korean government. So there's the IDF funding by MOFA and KOICA's International Cooperation Project and training programs are different projects that were funded. So this is the UNIDO's flagship initiative I would like to introduce to you. It's called a PCP program, and you actually select a country and you invest a lot of investment in this country. I don't know if you see the list of the people of countries, but there's Cambodia, Ethiopia, Morocco, Senegal, which are the recipient countries. And we have been implementing the program since 2014. And at the bottom, there is Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, and so forth. They have been added recently, and we're going to expand the scope of recipient countries. And as for PCP Cambodia, the Korean MOFA has provided the funding. So I believe that it will help to promote the Cambodian and Korean diplomatic relations. Next is the UNIDO's management priorities for 2021. So this is the guideline and direction. They're very broad and general. So I'd like to just point out a few keywords. First category is integrating and scaling up UNIDO's role in a global context. Actually, we're promoting industrial development, so we're interested in Industry 4.0 and the circular economy. So UNIDO's role needs to become more relevant in these areas. Second is a more practical solution, a practical role. When we implement a project, we want the projects to be more efficient and effective. So we are thinking about developing innovative platforms and tools to present project and activities. And last but not least, it's about strengthening partnerships. As I mentioned, the PCP countries, as PCP funding countries, as well as the member states and UNIDO affiliated institutions, they are all subject to further partnership with our organization. So I believe this is the slide that interests you the most. So this is the project proposal for the KOICA Multilateral Development Corporation. So the top is the title. We want to promote sustainable livelihoods and accelerate economic inclusion of Syrian refugees, internally displaced people, and host communities through entrepreneurship and skills development in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So this is our plan. And KOICA actually has given us 3 opportunities to propose, but we are currently at the stage of planning one project proposal. And of course, we will continue to develop the second and the third. I'm sure that you're aware of the context of the situation of the Kurdistan region of Iraq, so I'm going to skip. And the objectives and outputs, I'm also going to skip. But as I said, we're focused on promoting entrepreneurship and developing skills and also localizing different educational curriculums for local children. Thank you very much, and this wraps up my presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the introduction of the concept of new projects. And moving on without interruption, I'd like to invite Ms. Kim from UNWFP.
안녕하세요. 방금 소개받은 UN 세계식량대회 한국사무소 김유정이라고 합니다.
Thank you very much. I am Kim Yoo-jung from WFP. So the KOICA KCOC, thanks to your help, we were able to have the webinars and different acceleration programs and communicate with Korean NGOs. Thank you very much for putting together the same program for this year. So we have some updates to our presentation. We ask for your understanding. So I'm going to verbally update the presentation, the changes to my presentation. As you may well know, WFP has a very long history of partnership with Korean NGOs from 2012 to 2019 in Nepal, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Bangladesh. We cooperate with KOICA to implement Semaul, a village or Semaul movement project, and Good Neighbors also had joined that project, and the project was successfully finalized. And last year, we also gave a presentation on the successful outcome of the project, of this rural development project. No, so this is the content of my presentation, and you can say that we have regional divisions by 6 regions, and this is the national offices under each region. We have 20,000 people working in 90 countries around the world. So please take note of that. And I would like to share with you how actually we make the proposals to regional bureaus, and we get the feedback, and we take that into consideration. And we have already done this process, and we have shortlisted the projects, and WFP. The HP Nexus is very important, and it is one of our scope of operations. So in the beginning, we shortlisted quite a large number of projects. So I would like to talk about the criteria we used. So it's a project that has been funded that was already funded last year, or it's a project that was discussed with a local NGO before, or the country office that has been always interested in KOICA's project. That's one important criteria. And also you have to be based in Korea and have a good understanding of the Korean context. So these are some of the important requirements. And of course, WFP as office presence is very important. But of course, even though the office is not present, a place that can contribute to the WFP's knowledge and expertise, and to continue the coherence of the project, continuation of the project, we wanted to select projects that have been just ended to ensure its continuity. So Bangladesh, Niger in West Africa, and Cameroon in West Africa. So these are crisis-affected countries. So we are focused on these 3 countries, but their projects will end in 2020. So we decided that maybe we should continue these projects. I would like to share with you the future roadmap or timeline. So all of these tables will be updated for your reference, and you can refer to them later on. And at the bottom right, there is what's written link. If you click the word link, you can move to the website where you can access more information about each project. So we considered these criteria and discussed it with regional bureaus, and we're going to receive the concept papers by next week, sometime next week, and get the final approval from the WFP headquarters by the end of next week. And of course, after the selection is made, we're going to closely discuss with the KOICA local office. So if you contact our country office, then we will be able to provide you with the contact information with whom you're going to further discuss the project. And on the left, there is the geographical coverage. It is very important also to align our areas or regions of operations. So we held a lot of webinars with regional bureaus, regional offices, and we placed a lot of emphasis on NGOs. So geographical coverage should be an important factor, and you can reference the geographical coverage on the left. So the Bangladesh project will end in 2022. Let me briefly explain about this project. So this is actually building an autonomy for refugee camps. And we also want to secure, enhance food security and nutrition. And we wanted to actually help and minimize the impact of the Bangladesh people from natural disasters. So we used the forecast-based financing program to predict disasters and also to promptly respond when disasters strike. So it was a KOICA-funded project. And as for Niger, I don't know if it's included here. So it's also about school meals and scholarships, nutrition programs, and healing programs and recovery programs. And it's going to end in 2022. Cameroon is a crisis vulnerable country. It's not included here. So as for Cameroon, we are supporting a cooperative within Cameroon. So we provide logistics to the cooperative and provide funding to the cooperative so that they can better respond to crises and disasters. So the details of all of these projects will be updated for your reference later on. And please contact our office if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Well, if we could have had 1 week more for the preparation of this event, we would be able to listen to more details of the program, and I am sorry for that. And last but not least, we will listen to Ms. Lee from FAO. Good afternoon. I am Nara Lee, Assistant FAO representative.
Yes, so I'm sure that a lot of the organizations have been based in Korea for a long time, and you've prepared your presentations based on that. But we actually opened office last April 8th. So it's been very short. I mean, it's been very recent that we've been established in Korea. So I'm going to briefly explain about FAO. And my goal today is for you to know that FAO has an office in Korea. And I hope that you will go back home thinking that you can contact our office to get more information about FAO. So let me begin my presentation. So briefly, I'm going to introduce to you what FAO is and then also share with you some priority areas for FAO for us to work together in the future. And also, I'm going to talk about the FAO Korea, liaison office in Korea. And of course, the focus of the presentation will be on item 4, which is the cooperation modalities. Of course, the project proposal is very important, but we're now here to promote the cooperation. So we have to think about what kind of ways we have to promote our cooperation. And I will wrap up with the 2021 plan. You may know what FAO is, but FAO stands for Food and Agriculture Organization. And some people are confused because there is the WFP, World Food Program, and there is the Food and Agriculture Organization. I think that's a matter of urgency that we focus on. FAO is a leader in defeating hunger. So it's an organization tasked to do so. And we have 194 states, and we operate in more than 170 countries around the world. And we focus mainly on food, agriculture, as well as fishery, forestry, and much more. So incorporating with you, FAO is also going through innovation and transformation. And that is why when implementing projects in the future, we are going to not just focus on these 4 betters or 4 areas, but we will also implement 20 programs under 4 betters. I would like to share with you what they are about. So there is 4 better. First is better production. As you may well know, to ensure sustainability, we have to produce food and consume food. This is the focus of our work. And second is to have better nutrition, provide better nutrition. So we're developing like restaurant meals and also to promote healthy dietary habits. And of course, in all of this should be done in an environmental friendly way. And not only that, we also have to make sure that we seek inclusive economic growth by reducing inequalities in different regions. So I mentioned about the 4 betters, and each better has very specific programs. For the details of the programs under each category, you can refer to the PowerPoint slides. So you can have an idea about what will be the programs that you may be able to collaborate on in the future. So I'm going to skip these pages. As for Korea, Korea actually first joined FAO in 1949. As you may well know, we began as a recipient country. In 2019, Korea as well as FAO signed an agreement to strengthen, began to discuss strengthening cooperation. MOU was signed, but as I said, the office was not open until last April 8th. So I'm going to close the window. So then what do we do as an organization? I would like to summarize our activities into 3 categories. First is about FAA's strength. We want to share our experiences that we are very strong in. And of course, there are also there are areas where Korea excels in. So we want to develop those best practices and spread those best practices. And thirdly, we believe that the Korea's experiences should be shared with other developing countries. We want to develop programs to further facilitate that process. And if you look at the 3rd bullet point, of course, in doing what we do, we promote partnership with the private sector, academic institutions, and civil society. This is our mandate. Then what are the modalities for promoting cooperation? So as I said before, we operate in more than 170 countries. We have country offices and regional offices in this region. And we have FAO networks that are operating in these regions. And if you have a country of interest for you, we can play the liaison role. And as I said, that we have the technical expertise in the 4 betters I mentioned about, so we would like to share those technical expertise with you. And some organizations also mentioned in their presentation, but nowadays you attend a lot of Zoom meetings, and also attended one until midnight yesterday. One of the strengths of Zoom meetings is that we can be connected with people who are far away. So we have FAO events and FAO webinars with many different countries around the world. And I'm sure that the NGOs, as well as offline and online, if you want to have this kind of platform discussion, we can maybe organize like webinars to increase each other's visibility. And one of the important roles of our office operations is that we want to identify and develop best practices and share them with other countries. So what is the plan for 2021? There are different events in store, but I would like to talk about the funding proposal aspect. In the past, when FAO was first established, and ever since, we have partnered a lot with KOICA, and in Guatemala, there is an agriculture project to increase the resilience of the climate change. We are implementing this project, but the FAO project's outcomes have not been so good. But since FAO Korean liaison office has opened now. We're going to take into consideration the specific aspects of Korea, and also we're going to further cooperate with NGOs based in Korea so that we can implement more successful projects in the future. In order to do that, we have to prepare the funding proposals together. So I would like, regarding the 2021 proposal, we are working on the three proposals and based on balanced or geographical distribution. So other organizations mentioned about this as well. So the number is limited to 3, and we have not yet selected the recipient country. We have 5 regional offices. We're going to have internal discussions among regional offices. We have to shortlist 3 proposals for 3 countries to mingle and network together. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Lee, and congratulations once again on the opening of FAO office in Korea. Well, we look forward to the cooperation with KOICA, and it was such a fruitful occasion for all of us to. It's been a few weeks that we have distributed the guidelines for 2023 new project proposals. You didn't have enough time to review all the details, but thank you very much for attending this conference. And concerning these 8 different presentations of organizations, IOs, we would like to receive questions. We'll address, first of all, chat room questions and then floor questions. And if you would like to ask a question from the floor, please raise your hand first so that we can hand over the microphone and identify yourself before asking the question. And let me read the first question. Is it okay for IO to contact directly NGO? If yes, where can we get the contact lists? Has already shared the contact details of FAO on the screen. And you can contact us at KOICA Multilateral Development Office or KCOC. Yes. Sorry, the answer. Well, let me read the answer more precisely. For 2023, new project guidelines have already shared the portfolio of NGOs, so please refer to the list of NGOs, which includes the contact details of person in charge. And if IO wants to contact any specific NGO, KOICA can hold an online meeting like last year where you can discuss the details. And do you have any questions from the floor?
I am Jung Sang-young from Save the Children. Hello. Thank you very much for the presentations. And I have a question for UNFPA. So you said we have to find the relative comparative advantage of Korean NGOs. So which NGOs had what kind of comparative advantage and how compelling were those comparative advantages? I think that will serve as a reference for us if we approach any UNIOs. So are there any advice or tips that you would like to share with the NGOs? UNFPA. I didn't expect to receive a question. I mean, there are 8 IOs here. I wasn't expecting it, but I mentioned about the comparative advantage or competitiveness. And I was referring to the Rwanda project. So it's not about like expertise in a specific field, but the person who worked for the project said when collaborating with Korean NGOs, they want to have like because there's an expression of interest of format, and they would have loved to see a list of the skills of the NGOs in that expression of interest, because they can actually store them in the system and have access in the system, and they can know while reading from a document what are the strengths of the relevant NGO is. So that person said that would be very helpful. And while discussing with several country offices, what they tell us the most is that, Korea is an IT powerhouse. And of course, usually a UN's priority is working with local NGOs. So Korean NGOs need to have something that set them apart from the local NGOs. But one of the examples would be IT, because Korea has a lot of strength in IT, and we have a lot of online content. We do a lot of online content projects like comprehensive sexual education. And for example, they want Korean NGOs to use like VR technologies. Why not? So, but I think that, for further details, why don't we discuss it later on between you and me? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, while answering, we have received another question from online concerning guidelines, as Ms. Kim has presented just before. Well, these guidelines are already shared with KOICA and the country offices and branch offices, so please refer to your office manager. And as for further information, after this session, we also will share the guidelines with NGOs. If there's no further questions, let us move on to the next presentation. All right then, let's hear from NGO. In 2021 and 2022, we have reviewed the cooperation plan, and during the NGO projects, many communications have been reflected, and would like to introduce a best practice today. Of course, the contents could differ depending on NGOs, but IO participants are requested to listen to this presentation from the perspective of NGO. And to our NGO participants, please focus on the procedures of discussion. Please. Would like to invite Manager Chong Sang-young from Save the Children. Good afternoon. I am Chong Sang-young from Save the Children. Please display our presentation material on the screen. And you must be tired after listening to different presentations, and I think I have to make an apology in advance because my presentation will add up another dullness. Well, Well, we wish we could have had more opportunities to present ourselves. So thank you very much for giving us this chance. And this is quite burdensome for me to present our case as the sole NGO today. So please understand that. I have 6 points to share. The first 3 points are about Save the Children, how we view this international organization NGOs cooperation project, and the latter 3 points will be about proposal development, what kind of efforts we made for the proposals, and lessons learned, and challenges and suggestions. Save the Children, you may know our organization. Save the Children is a global organization present in more than 120 countries. In 2019, we celebrated the centennial, and we're 102 years old. So amongst all NGOs, we belong to the elderly group. Well, our vision is to help children to attain 4 rights to survival, protection, development, and participation. And our mission is to inspire breakthroughs in the way the world treats children and achieve immediate and lasting changes in their lives. Within Save the Children, how we view the UN partnership will now be explained in 2 areas. The first is about our purpose. We want to increase experience and knowledge of various donors because we assume that the UN organizations will have a lot ampler experiences than us and would like to bolster our capabilities as such. And expected outcomes can be summarized into 3. We would like to contribute to strengthening to capacity small and medium-sized NGOs in Korea through sharing experiences and lessons learned. And we also want to strengthen our overall capabilities, such as planning, management, and donor relationship, so that we can be more useful. And the third expected outcome, well, someone has just mentioned about local cooperation, but UN partnership and global agencies, they have a well-streamlined global guidelines, but to cascade those guidelines into local level, this requests a local network of partners. So I think we could be practical and efficient in disseminating and implementing global national strategies in our country. Well, these are candidate projects for 2022, both of them. You can refer to project title, duration, objectives. This is a brief summary of each project. Well, after developing and working on the project proposal, well, we figured out there are many different approaches and processes depending on UN partnership organizations. So prompt and appropriate communication was of utmost importance. Well then, how we developed a proposal will be shared. Well, we have 3 main areas for the proposal development. First, assessment or research. Well, it was last year that KOICA held some workshops for NGOs, and it was quite helpful for us, that orientation workshop, because we were able to know in which area UN organizations were interested in. Well, IOM RK online orientation was quite impressive to us, and we were able to get the gist of interest areas of IOM through this online orientation in last July. And we also need to pick up the relevant and capable department of our institute. So we also went through the internal assessment. And the second stage is about partnership. we analyzed the strength of UN agencies and Save the Children in Korea, and we had a discussion session to line up a strength of each entity, each side, and we also tried to appeal ourselves to UN agency. And this was done in Korea and in overseas countries. And as for Fiji project, we partnered with IOM in the 2nd July. We had a meeting for consultation, and we also had another consultation meeting in Fiji on 10th July so that we can analyze the strength and weakness. And the third stage was about a revision. It was preliminary evaluation stage of KOICA. It was around October and November last year. And IOM contacted us first, saying that they wanted to strengthen the partnership. So we developed accordingly the materials. Well, we will give you further explanation on that. And through that process, we were clear about what roles to be played and completed by Save the Children Korea and an IOM. And this is a simple timeline. And per each stage, what we did will be shared and what we tried to reflect as well. Well, the orientation was explained already. And secondly, we had a first meeting with IOM last year. Well, we got the news that IOM was developing a proposal in Fiji, and we requested the relevant information from IOM. And we got the consultation with IOM on Fiji concerning the scope and capacity of the project. And based on the accumulated information, we went to IOM to appeal ourselves about the project. So the focus that IOM had on Fiji project was clear enough. And while having the meetings with IOM, we also sent over the information and the updates to Save the Children Fiji office. And Save the Children Fiji also had its own network with local partners, but we also supported with the introductory materials to Fiji office so that they can be more advantageous than other partners. And in partnering with IOM, the scope and areas of cooperation was discussed in depth. And with time passing by, in November 2020, the second consultation with IOM was held. And the letter of intent, it was the output of the second consultation, which contained the activities and the roles of Save the Children. Well, these were not considered enough during the proposal stage, but letter of intent included more details about the proposal, the project proposal. Well, there was some remaining questions for us to get addressed, and through the Q&A session, we were able to enhance our understanding. Well, lessons learned, there were two. First, sharing information or cascading information is very important. In particular, INGO, where Save the Children Korea belongs to, once the updates are shared with IOM, we had to quickly transfer that information and update to Save the Children Fiji office and vice versa. So just 2 days before the first timely briefing, we got the appropriate information from Fiji, and we were able to have an in-depth discussion on that. And that didn't end only in Korea, but the continuous discussion was ongoing in local country, here in Fiji, so that helped. And in July, the discussion continued, and with that, we enhanced our understanding. And those who have already participated in these guideline projects may know that there are lots of dividing opinions. Well, as you see here, for Burkina Faso project, we have 5 different stakeholders, and this call was about the review of the project, and we were invited to this call. And we were able to see how KOICA reviewed the proposal of NGOs and what kind of feedback is given by KOICA. And we were able to have a comprehensive picture of the project that allowed us to have better understanding. And by discussing with the stakeholders, we had leveled up our understanding, and we recognize the importance of coordination role. And as for IOM has had consultations in Korea and Fiji at a time, and by participating in those 2 consultation meetings, we were able to recognize once again the importance of communication. And challenges and suggestions. One of the concerns I had was that one of the speakers had mentioned that it ain't over till it's over. It ain't over till the contract is signed. Well, so I am very concerned to definitely talk about this project, but I wish that we would sign this contract. But anyways, concerning the template of a proposal, well, depending on the template, well, there is a template including Korean NGOs information or not. Well, focal point, as a focal point, if Korean NGO is included, and that'll be helpful because when there's a feedback from KOICA about proposals, if NGOs could be included as focal point, then the understanding about project will get enhanced. And secondly, we work hard on developing projects, but we're not sure about how we sign an agreement and what will be the periodicity of the report, and that makes us less understood about the project. So if this can be shared in advance concerning the process of donor compliance and agreement, and that'll be helpful. And also, we haven't kicked off our project yet, so this is a road not taken. So we are now shaping the concept about the project, for frankly speaking. So if you could give us your advices, and it could be appreciated. Well, we are now considering to dispatch SCK secondee to the site, to the field, and we're discussing the roles and responsibilities of this person. Should this person be viewed as KOICA dispatch, or should this person be assigned to communication or the liaison work between UN agency and Save the Children and KOICA? So we're now trying to figure out how we can assign a role and a responsibility. So we're either UN agency or KOICA. If you wish to see a person doing a specific role and responsibility, please advise us so that we can have an in-depth discussion on that. Well, that was the challenge and suggestions. And we also have had some conclusions about UN agency programs. Well, I am sure that it was reported already. Well, multilateral cooperation should have strengthen the responsibility of Korean taxpayer and to strengthen the capabilities of humanitarian assistance. And through that, as an OECD donor country, it raises the status of Korea. We all agree with this idea. And the cooperation between UN agency and KOICA should be aligned with the strategic directions. Well, I don't think it is a good idea to include NGO as to funding tools or means. If you could expand the capabilities from the view of KCOC and KOICA, and that would be appropriately supporting for NGOs. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manager Chung Sang-young, for sharing with us the valuable experience of Save the Children. So now we're going to have a 10-minute Q&A session with Mr. Chung. So we would like to get the questions first from the floor. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have. Hello, I am Kim Dong-ju from World Vision. I have 2 or 3 questions. Last year, we assisted in the KOICA's NGO project for the first time. So regarding the sharing of information and internal processes, all of them were very different among different organizations. So we had a lot of difficulty in terms of communication in the beginning. So what were some of the challenges in terms of communication? How did you overcome those challenges of communication? Is my first question. Second question is not only the KOICA funding projects, but when it comes to partnership with IOs and NGOs, it's always important. So how do you promote partnership with different organizations, including IOs and NGOs? And you mentioned in your presentation about how deeply you're involved with the drafting and development of the proposals. So you have to review the proposals and give feedback. All of that requires capacity building. So how does Save the Children respond to capacity building needs? Thank you very much for your question. I think that my boss should be here to be able to give a better answer, but I will try my best to give an answer, combining the first and the second question, followed by the third question. So I think that ANGO, so we are Save Children and INGO, and we have a lot of experience in terms of our projects. So we have a lot of experience that have been built over the years. So not in the process of developing proposals, but we think about how to negotiate arrangements with the UNIOs. So there is Save the Children UK, Save the Children US, which gave us a lot of advice. And internally, we have donor-specific experts or contact points, and they play the facilitating role or mediating role. So although the organizations all have different internal processes, we were able to have a better understanding and minimize trials and errors along the process. Regarding the proposal development, it's not really like jointly developing the proposal. UN actually develops the proposal first, and at the NGO, and they actually indicate what NGOs should do. And within that framework, we look at what Save Children can do, and we lead discussions based on that. So I remember our partnership with IMO. It was quite memorable because IMO actually reviewed the proposal, and they had the review process, and they gave us a very specific feedback on the proposals. So we felt like we were jointly developing the proposal with IMO. Regarding the proposal development capacity, I think that it is very important to understand the context of the project and identify areas in which we can complement each other.
Well, we're open to another question. Well, my name is Kim Ji-hyun from UNHCR. This is not a question, but I would like to pose this idea to think it over together. Well, if you look at the flow of presentations from IOs, well, IO selects regions or continents, and the leadership belongs to IO. So as Mr. Chung has just mentioned, they would like to see that the NGO will be engaged from the beginning of the formation or the conception of the project. But today, it is more a top-down approach after already selecting continents and regions. Well, this kind of gathering will be held each year. We know that. And this year, we had a discussion with many Korean NGOs and agencies. For example, there's a project in Tanzania, for example, and if you have a chance to partner with us, so what is your main focus area? If this kind of a question is asked, each NGO, instead of proposing, instead of explaining on their strengths and their specialties. They just say that, please give us a chance. We can do everything like livelihood and wash and everything. So, like, not to see this kind of happening. Well, even if for a small scale project, uh, if you could give a chance to NGO who is specialized in a specific area, and if you could give us a detailed scope of project, then we can think of those proposals made by agency. Well, of course, the official contact channel is just one. There's a chance where there's a project and the appropriate agency or institution can apply for that, but it's not happening because the NGO is not qualified yet. Well, if IO just selects Latin America and Africa or the specific region, and the NGO may be thinking that we do not have an office over there, and how can we make an access to that? Of course, that could be an way of submitting the proposal, but we all know that there will be another chance next year. So when you produce a 2024 guidelines for next year, well, how about thinking to send out, for example, WASH to this agency or ICT related something to this NGO, like that? If you could have a paradigm shift of assigning projects, because currently we only have a top down, and the NGOs have one thing to respond to that. So more efficient and flexible way of approach is needed for us. I understand that all these processes should be transparent, and that is why the requirements of donor is only received by NGOs. And I know that this is difficult practically and creative suggestion. And if you would like to make a path that nobody had paved, then how about this and how about that? Well, please don't think it will not happening, but we will discuss it and we will give you an answer to that. Thank you very much for your fruitful suggestion.
Hello, I am Woo Seung-un from 지구촌 Sharing Movement. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I have a very practical question. So Save the Child Fiji and Korea have communicated as counterparts and prepared the proposal and did consultation. So I would like to know what you talked with I believe that there would be the differences of topic of discussion between the IMO Korea and also Save the Children of Fiji. I would like to also know the R&R between Save Children Korea and Fiji. What surprised me was that IMO delivered consistent message. So the message in Korea and the local message were all the same, identical. Secondly, what was the role R&R between Korea and Fiji? Our strength was that we know KOICA well, we have experience in KOICA projects, and we are quite sure that KOICA would be keen on this and that points. So we were able to provide that kind of advice. And of course, Save the Children Fiji had more local contacts with the local IMO. So the overall communication was led by Fiji, but I think that we also asked a lot about what they think, how they would love to respond. So I think that IMO was like a one body, and Save the Children also partnered like a one body. So there was a lot of back and forth exchange between 1 and 2 weeks, and internally within our Save the Children, we were able to enhance our understanding about the role and responsibilities of the project.
Thank you. My name is Kim Jin-young from GGGI. I would like to make a brief comment too. As for our institute, NGOs, like Good Neighbors, these are partner institutions that worked with us. We also have had worked with small-scale Korean NGOs from developing countries and advanced countries. We are very much experienced in deploying many development projects and cooperation projects. So we're not a UN agency, so we are a bit different. Well, each global NGO has a different restrictions and a different market, and we do not approach to select an appropriate agency or institution that suits us. But as for Good Neighbors, that's a good example. We are a joint partner, and we were equal partner to submit a proposal for project. And concerning institutions from developing countries or other agencies that could have a knowledge sharing or that could contribute to other areas like expertise, accumulated expertise in a specific area, then we try to engage that relevant NGO as a fit of purpose. We can establish a methodology accordingly. Well, Ms. Kim from KOICA has explained about that, like dispatching experts to the field. And there are benefits that we can provide as an international organization because we are not an UN agency, but we can connect NGO dispatched workers to PNI frame, but instead, well, like VODA from France, NGOs from advanced countries, they have a very thorough procurement process so that we can take advantage of expertise of each NGO. Thank you.
네, 좋은 말씀 감사합니다. 저희 이제 질문 주시고 또 이제 의견 주신 거
So
관련해서
regarding the questions
간단하게
and what was exchanged, KOICA would like to add one thing. So we are trying to facilitate the cooperation between IOs and NGOs. Thank you very much, Mr. Jung.
네, 저희가 이런 간담회나
So we're organizing this type of consultation process and the conferences. From a larger perspective, it is to actually develop and further expand the ecosystem for humanitarian aid. And as it was mentioned earlier on, the KOICA is playing the bridging role, and we cannot make decisions for you or on your behalf. And of course, as a person who's in charge of NGO in the KOICA's Multilateral Cooperation Development Assistance Department, so we are trying to identify projects or proposals for 2022 and 2023. But of course, we're not just focused on short-term level because we're trying to look in the long run. And as it was mentioned earlier on, we would like to continue to have this kind of venue so that we can exchange further and also explore opportunities to develop mid to long-term projects together. So to have a better understanding of different organizations and development projects based on that is important. Now we're walking the road that is uncharted, so it's becoming more and more difficult. It's very difficult to actually take the road that's not walk the road that's not taken, and we're beginning to realize that. But despite all those challenges and difficulties, we believe that this is a process that is inevitable for a brighter future. And when we talk with NGOs, we discuss about the project development, but they actually complain that communication is a issue, and I've heard a lot about how the communication was not facilitated, did not happen very well. But I think that this is something that is unavoidable because, as it was said, the arrangements may take some time, and of course, the private projects or may take shorter time. But as for KOICA projects, as well as other international organization and NGO partnership projects, it takes at least 2 years. And as we explained in our guidelines about the step-by-step approach, before we sign the arrangement, we cannot be sure about anything. And of course, it takes a long time to arrive to that stage, and we may have a lack of understanding and lack of communication along the way. But I believe that we can all address those challenges if we work together going forward. And of course, even after today's conference, I think that KCOC, of course, and KOICA will continue to provide you with the support. And as UNHCR said, it is very important that we look towards more innovative ways to better communicate and cooperate together. And I would like to, before we wrap up, we're going to have a FAQ session. So I believe that there are some questions asked online, and we're also going to take questions from the floor.
If there's no question, let me make another comment. Well, many NGOs think that the Korean personnel must be dispatched to the field. Well, it is not a mandatory, but as we have explained during the guidelines presentations, within the scope of the proposed project, well, let's say that once the work scope is determined, what's most important is to have a tangible outcome. That's what IO looks forward to NGO, and NGO can have a discussion with IO to establish an appropriate project plan. Of course, from the perspective of KOICA, if we could have Korean personnel dispatched, then that would be the ideal case because we can have an expanded ecosystem and we can strengthen the capabilities of Korean people. But this is not a mandatory. This question was frequently asked by NGOs, so that's why I am addressing this once again.
Hello, I am Park from Hunger Response. Thank you very much for your presentation. And last year as well, we listened to WFP and other organizations regarding their project proposal plans. So I believe that we had this kind of event last year. And I would like to know if any of the IOs participating today have plans to hold like a separate webinar in the future. And if we want to participate in those webinars, should we be guided by KOICA and KCOC? So I think that this question is addressed to KOICA or IOs. I think it's addressed to both parties. So we are holding the event in a different order compared to last year. So last year there was the guideline session on Zoom, and NGOs and IOs met online, and afterward there was a high-level dialogue. And then after that, we had a small consultation process, especially on highly probable project groups. We had a session like that in the past. But as you saw in the presentations of IOs today, I believe that the timeline for different organizations are a little bit different as to when these projects will become more specific or more concrete. So all of that is currently under review, but I think that we have to think about when it will be appropriate to hold that kind of webinars. And if you have any more specific requests, please make sure to give it to us. As you may well know, KCOC is Korea NGO Council for Overseas Development Cooperation, and we are assigned with the task to develop and implement this type of projects. And we provided capacity building programs last year, and from this year, we will also provide capacity building programs to better prepare for the projects from May. So of course, this is the first try this year, so we may have some rooms for improvement. We're going to begin that capacity building program in May to better prepare for projects, and we're also preparing like consulting programs to that end, but we do not have any specific timelines yet. So as soon as everything is set and decided, we'll get back to you, and if we need your help, we will contact you for further discussion.
Yes, hello. My name is Lee Kyung-ju from KCOC. I am not posing a question, but out of all good suggestions and comments, well, I think it should be proper for me to address those comments and suggestions because I think the comment will be helpful for you to understand it better. Well, the first purpose of this event was to help you to understand better the guidelines and also to explore the ideas where we can meet together in terms of cooperating ideas. And also, we were shared with future plans, and we only had one case shared today, but to have that case developed in 2021 and 2020, we have reviewed all the proposals and met organizations and NGOs concerning the same project. And KCOC held many different interviews and finally picked up on just one case that could be widely shared with NGOs. But if you could recall, we have different types of A, B, C for projects, and that categorization includes many episodes there was an approach that the KCOC assigned just one sector to an NGO, and other cases that NGOs were prepared, but the project was not shaped, or there were also cases for small NGOs who were not ready but had the potentials for participating in the project, but there was so many individual cases and limitations that we were not able to share all those cases with you today. So what I'd like to ask you, to our NGOs, is that, well, yes, you may think that other than Save the Children and the World Vision, and we are not going to have the chance. Well, that's not it. So you have many more potentials and chances in the field, but this is an official gathering, so that's why we only revealed some official parts or aspects of the ongoing project. So please develop your comparative advantage. Please think it over in a long-term approach. And one another thing that I would like to ask is that, well, Ms. Song has mentioned that there will be detailed updates about the timeline of future projects, but KCOC is a coordinating entity. So if you think that there should be an occasion for communication, please contact us at any moment. And last year, WFP and IOM, we've had separate sessions per each agency, each institution. So what we felt from those gatherings was that the more we communicated and the more we shared our wills and determinations, well, how much my counterpart wanted me, well, we were able to feel those, and we were quite encouraged by feeling that emotions from our counterparts. So thank you very much, and contact us at any moment.
We are very happy to collaborate with KCOC from what I just heard. Yes, so we have about 5 minutes left before we wrap up. So any last minute questions that you would like to share with us? I am Yang Mi-gang from KEF. Last year, KCOC implemented the accelerated program, and I became interested in the works of KCOC. This is my personal reflection. When IOs work, I think they want to have the project insured in terms of safety or security. So I think that they will feel more secure working with large NGOs, who have proven track record. So you're implementing this type of program from last year, and I think that you want to, and we want the NGOs to have more contact with the IOs and promote cooperation. But I think that in that sense, there are lots of challenges faced by the mid to small-sized NGOs. So KCOC is supporting the small and mid-sized NGOs, but I think they should also be the focus of our attention. Of course, the backgrounds and histories of organizations are all different, but large NGOs, so they can do so many things on a voluntary basis. But there are other NGOs who cannot in smaller size. I think that we have to think about what should be our focus. And I think that we also have to highlight or shed light on the difficulties faced by the small and mid-sized NGOs. So it really depends on where we want to focus. The same goes for access to information or information that is available. So in all of this process, I really have to think which areas should be the areas of our interest, of priority. And of course, we have to think about how we're going to promote bottom-up approach. I think that is the approach that needs to be adopted to design the program. So I think that rather than focusing on the outcome of the program or potential outcome of the program, we really have to look in the long run. We have to be able to also share the burdens and the difficulties faced by the small and mid-sized NGOs. Thank you very much for your feedback and comment. You mentioned about the accelerating program. So Good Neighbors and KCOC are implementing the accelerating program, which is commemorating its second edition this year. And we actually considered your remarks in designing the accelerating program for this year. For the past 2 years, looking at the status of the project outcomes, we believe that there is a need for tailored support for small and mid-sized NGOs. We fully agree with that. So from the basic entry to UN partner portal registration, we can cover all of these areas. And this year, we are preparing 2 basic courses, which is a basic course and intensive course. I would like to first talk about the intensive course. So we are developing projects, and there are, and I think the NGOs will be interested, NGOs who are nearing the phase of implementation of the project will be interested in the intensive course. So some people asked what is the rationale for these operations and how does KOICA communicate with IOs. So a lot of people were curious about that process, and that will be dealt through our intensive course session in June. But before the intensive course, there's going to be basic course. So we're just dividing, for the sake of dividing the course, we're saying it as basic and intensive. So this is the overall framework of our course. So we thought about what kind of information would be required for people to make, or the NGOs to make an entry for the first time. And basically, there are also other projects that KOICA are implementing. And if you have an understanding about how the projects are being implemented by KOICA, you'll be able to find the right timing to make your entry into this process. So we are preparing some courses like this in May and June. Not only that, we're trying to make the information available. So we're updating the NGO portfolio and providing it to IOs called PPINK. Of course, IOs will not always use what we provide them with, and some people mentioned about this, but I think that NGOs should act more proactively in approaching the IOs. We actually spent a lot of time, especially a few months, to develop this program. And so we're very looking forward to your feedback. And I'm sure that there may be a lot of feedback coming from you, but we will take all of that into consideration and incorporate them in the next program. So we will make sure that our ecosystem that we want to expand will be done in a harmonized manner. So that is the PPINK. So it's a pink publication, as the name suggests. And this year, we did not actually print them out. It's available only online. And the same information is available to all international organizations and our national offices. We're going to regularly update the publication. So this is the second edition. And while preparing for the second version, you can see a lot of updates have been made. So this means that the people have become more interested in NGOs over the past few years. So this is what we're providing in terms of information. So we're trying to come up with the best and creative solutions and ideas as to how we can well implement the program. And within our department as well, we're always thinking about how to collaborate and cooperate with other departments within KOICA to better implement our program. So we look forward to your continued support. And I think that time is already up. So maybe we can wait for only 10 more seconds to get last questions that you may have.
Yes, the last question.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 굿네이버스의 사회원 과장입니다.
Hello, I am Soyeon from Good Neighbors. Well, as KOICA and KCOC have mentioned, many more NGOs will be led to the engagement in diverse projects, and Good Neighbors is very much interested in these international projects, and this area is of main interest, a major interest to us. So what we are thinking is to have a consortium to engage in a specific project, like the project for the project with the NGOs who have specialty but not having any experiences of international projects. So do you have any ideas about that? And have any specific plan for that?
네, 답변드리도록 하겠습니다. 일단은 원칙적으로
Well,
앞서
let me address that question. Theoretically, as mentioned earlier, there's a guideline and internal regulations and rules. So we recommend to respect those international rules and regulations of IOs. Well, KOICA cannot make any judgment if you are pursuant to the internal rules and regulations of IOs, but we are proposing only recommendations or criteria for Korean NGOs. And if you could recall, there are definitions shared, like Korean NGO is a NGO based in Korea, or at least have a Korean representative. But if you want to work with 100% foreign NGO or a local NGO which doesn't belong to the definition of Korean NGO, so if you respect that condition, then other areas of consortium, yes, once you discuss with the relevant IO, yes, it is possible. Yes, thank you very much.
행사의 마무리를 해도록
And it's now time to conclude today's event.
저 오늘 무엇보다도 이 행사를 통해서
Above all, through today's conference, I hope that the NGOs and IOs were able to better their understanding of each other. And last year we had the high-level dialogue, and what we talked among us was that we really wanted to share more specific examples and cases this year, and I think that we partially achieved that goal. But from this year, a lot of the projects will go through our arrangements and will be implemented. So I think that we will have more to share next year as well. And we look forward to your participation in this journey. Thank you very much for joining us in today's conference and attentively listening to one another. Before we wrap up, I would like to tell you that there is the self-checkup form, health checkup form, and survey on your table. Please make sure that you have filled out all the items. And we would like to also thank our online participants who have stayed with us until the end of this conference, despite the time difference and different time zones. Thank you very much for your participation. And when you leave the window, you will be directed to a survey link. So please make sure to fill it out. Thank you very much for your participation, and goodbye.